Hello, everyone. Welcome to Lunch, Tech, and Chat. I've got my friend William Remore here. William is involved in blockchain, VC, emerging tech. And as I presented yourself, you can present myself.
So Andre is the head of AI for one of the big corporate companies around the world, doing a lot of interesting stuff in that space. And welcome everyone.
Yeah, the proposal of this podcast, if it's the first time that you're here, the both of us, we're having lunch and having a chat, and you guys are listeners. And feel free to add topics or things that you think we didn't cover or what you liked. Just add some stuff in the comments, and maybe next time we'll start reading the comments of you guys.
Yeah, we just started this podcast when we just realized that we were meeting up for lunch every now and then, and we just she talking a whole bunch of interesting, random, weird ideas all over the place, and both of us, of course, very interesting in the tech space. So we said well, why don't we just do this and share this with the world.
Nice way to connect. All right, so William, some interesting stuff that has been coming out on AI in the last couple of weeks. We spoke about in the last episode about Flux. So Flux is a new AI model to generate images.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing with Flux is because Flux is open source, you can actually generate any type of image that you want.
Yeah.
So there's no restriction. And even the restrictions that are there, you can sort of drop them because the model is all open source. And what I've been seeing people doing is training Flux with your face, so you can generate images using yourself. So you use Flux, so you train the Flux, let's say, with a bunch of images for yourself, so the model learns how your face works and your body to build type and stuff like that. And you can pretty much generate anything, like say, oh, I'm hugging Donald Trump, and then you just create an alias so the AI knows when to use yourself in the picture.
Right, okay.
Imagine how much deep fake that's going to create. And the model is so good that the photos, they look like real photos. I think they get into a stage that if you don't know what you're looking at, you believe it's a true image.
Right, okay. So you don't have those weird kind of characteristics of some of
six fingers.
image. Yeah, 6 fingers, or the thing when there was a whole bunch of posts around that the royal family in the UK, when they showed that Kate that was actually recovering, and then a lot of people start actually spotting weird stuff in the image by saying, no, this was actually AI generated, and then there was a whole outcry about that. So it doesn't have any of those.
No. So it's a lot more realistic, and I think if for people that have played with Flux before, if you know how you're prompting, and it's good that you can use another LLMs to help you prompt it right.
Yeah.
But if you prompt it correctly, then the quality and it looks very realistic. So it looks like a photo, but looks like real person. The writings and the words, they're a lot better than other LLMs. So they don't. I think it's hard for you to detect that has been generated via AI.
Yeah.
And I think that creates a new sort of wave that seems to be coming, with Grok 2 from Elon Musk, where he's dropping a lot of the restrictions. So now you can sort of generate images stuff that you wouldn't be able to do with all the LLMs because of the safety around.
Yeah.
Grok has dropped a lot of
so
those
everybody
safeties.
Can be a den, essentially, kind of.
Yeah, so that sort of view that Elon Musk has there of freedom, that anyone,
censorship resistant and all. Yeah.
So he's applying that to his models, and Grok 2, it topped the chart for a little bit, and then Gemini was over it, and then the new version of GPT-4o just went ahead of it. But the thing that it creates is this new mentality, cyberpunk mentality.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, everyone should be able to do whatever they want. and if people don't like, they're just not going to consume it.
Yeah.
And I think just looking into, like X and the X Twitter, it's culture. It's very hard to call Twitter X, but the way that Elon Musk is driving it is like open to anyone to do whatever they want and trying to drop the censorships. And I know it's not 100% because some governments still can sort of control what is consumed by their own countries. And I know sometimes Elon Musk pushes back, but yeah, there's a reality check there as well. But with this new wave of LLMs, I wanted to talk about a new model as well that came out called Hermes 3. So Hermes 3 was built based on which version of Llama? So it was based on Llama, and I'm just checking here on my notes. It was based on Llama 3.1.
Yeah.
And the thing with this, so the way that they've built, it's quite a small company that has built Hermes 3. But the idea on Hermes 3 is that following what, let's say, XAI is doing, they take LLMs to the limits of dropping all the restrictions and barriers on LLM.
Yeah.
So what that's creating is pushing like the model to its limits. So extending like the technical capabilities and allowing the LLM to answer any type of questions.
And is it like a multimodal as well, or is it like more focused on?
It is multimodal, but I think it's more focused on test outputs. But the thing on Hermes is it's unlocked and uncensored in a way that even like I saw some people trying it out and just trying to understand how the LLM works. If you ask about the own LLM existence, the LLM starts to go into a rabbit hole of trying to understand why does it exist? Is there a real person? All that stuff that you used to have on the beginning of GPT, it's all blocked now.
Mm-hmm.
So just in this new era of LLMs, companies, different governments trying to sort of regulate this stuff, and then other people with the different mentality of we shouldn't restrict, those things should be all free. How do you see this, and how do you see the world that we're moving to?
So it's interesting. So interesting that you're mentioning this and like completely switching a little bit the topic. I'm reading the first, it's actually it's a sci-fi book, okay, by these authors called Ian Banks. Okay, so Ian Banks is probably one of the most well-known sci-fi writers. He wrote a bunch of books in the 1980s and so on. And I'm reading a first book in a series that they call like the Culture series, right? Very similar to kind of like personalities like Isaac Asimov and others that actually have written, books like sci-fi books like that. Like some people actually might recall from like Foundations, which was like an Apple TV kind of series, but they actually didn't go for too much. And to be honest, in my view, not great in what it did. But also people might recognize, authors like Asimov through that Bicentennial Man, where Robin Williams interpreted actually, a society that existed like, a few hundred years from now.
Mm-hmm.
And we had actually kind of like we're actually dealing with some sort of sentient robots that were living alongside the society. Anyways, so this book, it's called The Master, Player of Games, the Ian Banks book. And they talk a lot about this society that actually lives, in the future, what they call like the culture society, where humans and drones and other types of sentient machines, they live together and they live in some sort of harmony. And humans also live across different planets. And they mention about this, like the book talks a lot about the notion of the fact that some types of games in the society are played in a relativistic view of the world. But there's not necessarily a truth, but there is kind of several type of truths. And society has changed in that view of the world, and the games that actually have evolved with society also have changed in the society based on the fact that there were like that symbiotic relationship between humans and machines. So that makes me think a lot about that, like kind of like almost like the Elon Musk view of the world is like, no, we should have no censorship to anything, and we should let machines and models and so on develop and potentially develop some sort of sentience. I don't know if that's the word, of kind of like image of themselves, of what they are and personalities and things like this. And then we will see what is it that will transform society eventually.
Yeah.
I mean, some of these developments kind of make me think about what I'm reading.
Yeah, he probably
it's completely
read
sci-fi. I'm sure he has read that.
He probably read that in Foundations and all the other shit because that's what he's aiming towards.
I've heard him actually talk about it quite a few times about Asimov and all these books. I think he read all of that stuff.
Yeah,
when he was like a teenager.
Yeah,
because the books from Asimov, they date back from 1950s or something like this. You used to be like publishing those sci-fi magazines instead of like shitty books, and they could compile it actually into books. Back in those days, it were just like really for nerds and so on. And I think Ian Banks, it's maybe a more like recent generation, because I think his books is more like 1980s and so on, but it's still great, right? So I was just trying. I loved so much when I read the Foundations 2 years ago, which is like 6 books that make up the Foundation series. But Asimov like has written like 500 books. He was a prolific writer and great writer actually. PhD in chemics or something like this. Anyways, chemistry. But this guy, I was trying to look at like, is there anyone that is as good as Asimov at writing? And actually, I really like it. What he's doing. But anyways, coming back to the main topic of AI. Yeah, I'm a little bit actually shared in terms of, shall we kind of just leave it, let it go and let it play? Or is it something that we should try to control and harness it actually from the beginning? But I think I don't know, maybe we will have to explore the limits of it a little bit to see if we develop a new conflict somewhere in that relationship between models and
the problem
humans.
For me is I have no problem with the idea of a society that can consume and produce any type of content, because I think depending on the content and who's producing that, the society will adapt not to consume things that people think that is harmful. But that's a very anarchical way of seeing society. And we know that most of the times that doesn't work. So some sort of censorship or control, I think it's required. Like, I don't think we are in that level of let's just go crazy and people will adapt to what's real and what's not.
Yeah.
But I think the problem is when you come to things that are intelligent as some of those LLMs on generating content or even images, that starts to blend reality with sort of fake news. I don't know if that's the word, but it tries to blend reality starts to blend with the not reality or non-reality. And that creates...
How would you define reality, actually?
Well, imagine, for example, someone takes a photo of you and creates something harmful for yourself using AI, right?
Yeah.
If that's so real that other people would trust, that becomes a problem in society for, for individuals, for personas, for, I don't know, it just goes above my my brain or the way that I can dilute this in my way of thinking. I think some limits are required just because it's a technology that is blending with reality, and creating a new reality might be harmful. I don't know.
Yeah, but do you think that actually particular sets kind of like maybe should be allowed to just kind of like be on a free way? Are we talking about every type of reality, or are we talking about like, I don't know, maybe specific subsets of the population?
I think there are things. So I think creating images can be harmful for elections, can be harmful for public figures. It can be harmful for individuals, and that's one of the problems. Like, like for example, if you see that sort of canceling culture of people just getting someone and start canceling, and some people have died because of that. And sometimes the news weren't even true, and people got like they got judged for something that they didn't do, and now we have more tools to create that even more real. But that's not the only thing. That the other things is giving content or information for people on how to break into cars, how to create bombs, and how to like, I see it's always that question of with big powers comes big responsibilities.
Yeah, possibly.
But not everyone's a Spider-Man,
just
right?
not coaching Spider-Man here.
So not everyone's a Spider-Man, and I think some rules and some boundaries are needed. I don't think our society is on that level yet to have everything sort of free for all.
So I think there's an argument, and I'm just gonna play maybe kind of like devil's advocate here. There's an argument as well that because the tools are there, and some of these tools are, open source, doesn't that actually also give the power for attack, but also for counterattack?
Yeah, but you're just creating new weapons, new nuclear weapons that you have to learn how to defend yourself.
I understand that, but like, I mean,
just because you can create a nuclear bomb or what's the other one called? The helium, not helium. What's that bomb that
the one that is actually more destructive?
Yeah, than a nuclear
bomb.
Hydrogen bomb.
Yeah.
Just because you can create one doesn't mean that you have to.
Yeah, of course, but some of the development of that technology that has been done, like in the past, even like the creation of hydrogen bombs and so on, as a deterrent. So long as the people that actually can press the red button are on the right side of history and have enough checks for them not to to launch it.
Yeah,
but they are a deterrent for others that actually might have lower amount of power, right? So there's an argument.
Yeah, there is an unbalance on power because you don't have the tools that you need.
Right.
It's like Ukraine, right? Like if they still had the nuclear bombs, Russia wouldn't probably have invaded them.
For example.
Yeah,
right?
for example.
Or if Ukraine had like a hydrogen kind of ally that could actually just say, hey, you can say, hey, Putin, you can actually put nuclear heads on your missiles, but have an ally that has the hydrogen.
Yeah.
And a number of warheads of those.
Yeah. Or if North Korea didn't have any nuclear weapons, they would probably be invaded by now, right?
Possibly. Yeah. You never know. So like this, but I think coming back maybe to a higher level discussion here, like, I know that actually society is getting quite adverse towards actually kind of like combative discord. We're also pushing in that direction. And I think maybe having some of those tools, we all seem to be kind of eager towards some sort of tools for confrontation, right? Be that confrontation very harmful or be more healthy, like, healthy confrontation around, I don't know, finding the truth about science, or
the cure of cancer,
or the cure of cancer, and different kind of technologies that actually can enable that, and then people that actually challenge them because they might also be harmful to the body, etc., right? So maybe giving a little bit of free, and again being the devil's advocate here, maybe giving a little bit of freeway where both parts of the argument, people that might be wanting to harm and those that actually might wanting to protect themselves from harm, giving them the tools to do it. Maybe at some point in time we might find a balance.
Yeah.
Almost like, if you will, like the social media balance, right? Where it's like everybody went on, social media, like a decade
There's
ago.
no balance. That's screwing the kids.
well, no, but I mean, but we are finding a balance in a way that I think, right? So like 10 years ago with social media, we were all like, yeah, this is great. This is going to revolutionize the way that we connect with each other. It's going to
And it did.
This it. And it did to an extent, right? It did to a large extent. But also now, that generation that is now becoming parents, they are way more aware about the harms that might do in terms of addiction and all the things to their kids, right? They couldn't have had that if they themselves haven't experienced.
Yeah, I mean, every revolution will take to some of those steps of, like what the revolution means, how is that impacting, how that impacts society, how that impacts people. And this is what we're going through with AI. There's lots of good stuff. And we talked a lot about those open models, and we can come back into this discussion.
Yeah.
But talking about the good stuff, so Google had an event where they announced Pixel 9.
Yep.
So Pixel 9 is the new phone. Hardware-wise, is not as good as iPhone. So you can all the models of iPhone are more powerful than Pixel 9. But the thing that Google is taking to the next level is it's all integrated with AI. Like everything that you do, pretty much. You can open your assistant, and your assistant is with you on your phone. So let's say I'm watching a YouTube video of cooking, and I say, oh, which ingredients did they use? Can you summarize it for me? And because it's watching with you, it's
what are the mixes I can make that makes something a little bit
But it's aware of everything that you're doing on your phone. Like, it can see your apps, it can see your calendar. So that becomes like your personal PA on your pocket that is always with you. And you can even use I think it's called Google Buds, which is like the earphones, and the wireless earphones. And with them on, you can be talking to your AI all the time. So let's say you're walking on the street and you're talking to your AI, asking questions, asking to do things, asking, prepare a meeting, write an email, or things even above and beyond, or what you can do with Alexa and Siri, because that's LLM, right? So you can be asking information. You can say, oh, hey, I'm in Paris, I'm on street XYZ. Is there anything to do here?
Yeah.
And you can communicate lively with that. So it's like having an assistant, like I said, in your pocket. And even other things, like if you are in a call, for example. So let's say if you call me, I can say, summarize this call. What did I discuss with
Like
William?
some of the transcriber models that actually
but in a normal call, it's always on. It's always on your phone. And the thing that they're saying is that the LLMs run on your phone. So they probably lighter LLMs, like smaller models that are doing the basics. And then if you need
mini,
something,
like the 4.0 mini, that kind of
like
stuff.
that, because Gemini has the Gemini Mini as well. And then if they need to contact for something that is more complex, then it sends the request to Gemini 1.5, which is similar to the idea of what Apple is doing with OpenAI. Like they have the local models, and when they need to contact for more complex activities, it calls OpenAI in the backend, but Google is doing that with Gemini 1.5.
Does that mean that actually some of those models will also be running on the edge, rather than actually kind of like on a centralized service, or actually?
They run on your phone.
Deploying it on the client side.
The smaller models of Gemini, they run on Pixel 9 and a lot of the new Android phones. They will run locally on your phone, so they'll be doing everything on your phone. Like I said, unless it's a more complex activity and needs to call the web. The new models of Apple will do the same. the strategy on Apple is a little bit different. Like they're not doing retrospective to models that already exist.
Yeah.
They releasing new phones, new models, more expensive, that have AI on it.
Yeah.
But I think for Android, a lot of the things will start to pop up. But it's quite cool, like Pixel 9, fully AI enabled. If you take a photo, you zoom in your photo, AI can enhance the photo. So when you zoom in, it doesn't look like the pixels have been stretched.
Yeah.
You can remove things of your photo. So let's say I take a photo and there's something on the background that we don't want. We can just sort of highlight it in the phone and removes and updates the photo so it doesn't look like that.
That's really exciting.
Yeah. And other things like, let's say I'm taking a photo with you, for example. We go to an event or something. I can take a photo of you and you take a photo of me and the phone put us two together as we were on the same photo. So you're not going to have to ask someone to take the photo for you anymore.
Right, okay.
Like, oh, can you take a photo of us? Sure. No, your phone does that for you.
Right, okay. And is that actually using some of those open source models as well?
No, it's all using Google's proprietary.
Yeah. But you could actually start then kind of maybe combining some of those output with some of those open source models to do like crazier stuff.
Well, because it's all in the phone and in the operational system, you don't really have space to do that, because unless if you get an Android because it's sort of open source and you create your own model and then redeploy back to your phone or something like that.
Yeah.
Don't know if that would be possible, but I think it would.
That's really exciting actually.
It is exciting.
Yeah.
So it's a new way of using your device, right?
Yeah. And when is actually the release of
I don't know when the release is, but I watched parts of the event and it was really exciting to see. I think if I think of Google, I think they are ahead on a lot of the enablement of AI, but their LLM still not that great if you compare to others. Like I don't think I would replace, for example, GPT-4o by Gemini 1.5. I just think that GPT is still ahead. But I feel like competition of models is a new version comes out, it leads all the lead charts for a few days, and then the others get an update, and it's just very, very dynamic at the moment. It's not like OpenAI is the king of the world anymore. They are for a few days, and then Google releases something, and then Anthropic releases something, and it's always one of the models taking the leaderboards.
But actually, a new benchmark is established every time that there is actually a new model that is, which is actually the nature of technology, anyways, right? You expect technology to evolve in that direction.
But I just mean like, OpenAI is not the only way to go now. Like there are options. There are other players and there are other options. They're not a monopoly anymore.
Do you have people kind of established some sorts of benchmarks where people have put where one model overperformed certain types of tasks and activities as well?
Maths and reasoning and
image section.
There's lots of testing, that's automated testing that you can do, and there are frameworks that you can use for that, but maybe that's a conversation for next
for another time. So kind of like moving on to something a little bit more a little bit funnier actually that happened this week. You had some news that went viral about Reagan and her breakdance kind of gaffes that actually happened in the market. So
I was telling William just before this podcast, and it was quite funny how Reagan, so she is an Australian breakdancer that went to the Olympics, because breakdance, it's a sport now in the Olympics.
But we talked about the weird sports actually last week.
And it's really interesting because she's like she has like a doctorate in animal movements of Australia or something like that.
Oh really? I didn't know that. Okay.
She's like, I think she's 36 years old or something like that.
So she's a PhD in like a zoology or something.
So she's 36 years old, and she was a breakdancer. But the thing is, I don't know how. I didn't dive into this whole conversation to understand like the news, but she got elected by Australia to represent Australia on breakdance. And the way that she danced, like it was so funny. Like she was doing movements of Australian animals, and she got zeroed out for every single performance that she did.
Was it during the Olympics or some like
during the Olympics?
competition?
She participated in the Olympics.
Right. Okay.
And everyone thought that she was like taking the bets on it, or like was a comedian or something like that. But it was a real competition. It was like competitive. And yeah.
So how did she do that? What kind of movement does a koala do?
Oh, it's like the koala and the snake and the kangaroo, and man, that was so fucking funny. Like they've been taking a lot of the videos out of the web because they are owned by the Olympics committee or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's restrictions on the usage of that image. But man, if you can, I watched like a Australian commentator commenting one of her presentations. It was like, so funny.
Oh, this is the movement of a koala. The koala moves.
I know he was taking the piss. Like, it was like a funny, like a comedy thing, but man, it was so funny. And yeah, she just became a big meme on the internet, and I think she has turned off all her social media because she has been harassed and shit. So
I would imagine so. Yeah,
a lot of people take it really badly, like as she would be taking the piss, and didn't like the way that she competed.
The number of like Star Wars memes maybe about about her dances, and I think some of this stuff, to create maybe like less harmful content, people using the background of what she has done.
Yeah,
maybe they could create some sort of Flux model or
where she turns into animals as she's doing the movie.
It's not her, right? Like, so you could actually turn something that actually had become a bit of a comic into something more, playful, where people would kind of like imagine any individual or even like an individual that doesn't exist with a face that doesn't exist, actually kind of like doing a kangaroo boxing, dance.
Train a LLM on creating video motions of Australian animals, they all human body dancing.
Yeah, exactly. And that could become funny, so long as people can like disassociate actually the person that did it, I suppose, from it, and then actually the meme actually could almost.
But the most interesting thing for me is like this thing has been such a big news everywhere in the world, and you didn't know of it.
Yeah, it was a busy week, so I didn't have so much time actually to kind of like to follow viral meme stuff this week on the web, unfortunately. But I'll definitely look into that.
All right, so let's go to the next topic, talking a little bit about investment trusts in Web3 and some of the stuff happening in VC in the crypto side of world. Well, not crypto, but more blockchain. So I'll let you lead the conversation now.
Yeah, so we had a couple of things actually that happened over the last few days. Probably start with one that has been really almost kind of a bit of like a revolution, or going back to a cypherpunk kind of like idea. So in these last few days, there's this guy called Justin Sun. He's quite well known in the Web3 community.
Yeah.
He's essentially kind of like was an investor in some early Ethereum or like post Ethereum kind of like DeFi projects, EVM projects, and got into a bit of trouble as well with with the SEC and whatnot. I mean, who doesn't? But and in this last few days, it was announced that this project that is called RepBTC had brought Justin Sun amongst their partners, right, of the project. So the thing to notice is here is that two things. So like, Justin has been associated with these, regulatory issues in the past because of, a lot of pump and dump schemes that he has managed.
Right.
Or at least kind of, that the market and the regulators have actually identified with him actually managing it. But also, Rep BTC, the other thing is Rep BTC is essentially a version of the BTC, so of a Bitcoin asset that lives on the Ethereum blockchain. Okay, so I have to see that. I mean, for those that actually are not familiar with the Web3, so essentially, almost each blockchain is an island on its own. Each network is actually a network its own, and it doesn't communicate that easily with other networks.
Different chains,
unless they are fully compatible. Like a lot of what we call like the EVM chains, right? That are kind of like all based on the Ethereum network. But in this case here, BTC, Bitcoin, and Ethereum, they're not necessarily kind of full compatible. So the vast majority of projects use some sort of like a bridge,
which is wrapping
which actually wraps one asset into the other, and then actually can communicate.
Yeah. So just for people to understand, is like, imagine if you're taking US dollars, you putting in a savings account, and then you're creating another money into another currency that is backed up by that money that you wrapped and hold it.
Yeah.
That's sort of how it works in simple terms.
Yeah, in simple terms, yeah. So essentially kind of like something that actually lives in another world, and to live in another world needs to be kind of like backed by something in its original world, right?
It's like you're saving gold in a storage so you can generate something for people to use.
Yeah, or for example, for people that, for example, like have invested in gold, people have bought, ETFs of gold instead of actually kind of holding the actual gold. Yeah. But someone has
put paper that says that the gold is somewhere.
The paper is somewhere in a mint or in some vault.
That you don't even know. Maybe it doesn't even exist.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or you just believe that actually exists. So it's actually very similar to that. So that Rep BTC that actually lives on the Ethereum chain. So you have to know that there's relatively little BTC relative to its market capitalization. There's relatively little BTC that has ever been ported.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes back to that, BTC folks are BTC maxis. They don't want to have their BTC anywhere else than on the Bitcoin network, right? So they want to keep it over there. And Rep Bitcoin essentially is those that actually have pledged or have put that Bitcoin. So actually a counterparty, or can be a smart contract, wraps that and actually issues a token on the Ethereum blockchain.
And for people that don't know what a smart contract is, imagine that you're signing a digital contract that gets stored in the blockchain. So it's a contract that can't be modified.
Yeah, essentially. Essentially. So yeah, it's just like a logic on the blockchain. This Rep Bitcoin makes up 98% of all Bitcoin that lives in Ethereum.
Right.
So it's actually a significant portion of the market share of
Billions,
Bitcoin.
Trillions.
Yeah, it's not trillions because, Bitcoin itself, $1.23 trillion. And
billions.
And actually there's only about, I think it's only about $10 billion worth of Bitcoin that lives in Ethereum.
That's a lot of money.
And this Rep BTC makes up 98% of all of that.
Right.
All of the different flavors of Rep Bitcoin. Yeah. So with the association of this, there's a few DeFi projects, so decentralized finance projects, that have said, well, we don't want an association with this, with Justin Sun.
Is that because they're becoming a monopoly?
No, it's because so you have to understand that actually Rep Bitcoin uses some third-party counterparties that actually are custodians of the actual Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So BitGo and a few other players. And essentially those custodians, when you issue a new Rep Bitcoin on the Ethereum blockchain, that Bitcoin that are using the Bitcoin chain goes into what I call like a multisig or an off-chain cold storage that is managed by a certain custodian. It is that custodian that actually then goes on and issues the equivalent of that in tokens in the Ethereum blockchain, right? Yeah. Because now Justin Sun is associated with the organization that is doing the custodianship of that Bitcoin on the Bitcoin blockchain. There's a whole bunch of people. Oh no way. It's gonna start actually, doing all the things with that Bitcoin, potentially change the investment mandate and start kind of, leveraging on it, whatever the fear is, right? So all of a sudden now, then you have a whole bunch of projects all over the place saying like, no, these guys are going to screw up. So like the competitors of Rep BTC, these guys are going to screw up. Let's actually, hey guys, you should all trust my framework for wrapping Bitcoin based on X, Y, and Z, all the different flavors from decentralized to centralized kind of flavors of it, and trying to make a pitch. Even projects that in the past got hacked to their bridges. They're all coming back to try to pitch because all of a sudden everybody knows that days at the month for holding or leveraging Bitcoin on Ethereum, because you can do a lot of that actually on Bitcoin chain. So there is a demand for it, and now everybody's trying to make a pitch, so actually they can get actually some market share out of Rep Bitcoin. So it's becoming quite an interesting dynamic there.
Can you make money then?
I'm sure there are lots of people actually kind of like making money out of that dynamic. To be honest, it's not even necessarily clear that that actually the involvement of some personality in itself changes what Rep Bitcoin, but it's more about the market perception that could happen, and therefore everybody's making a go at it, and everybody's like, oh no, we should. Even Coinbase actually then kind of like publish to the community through Twitter and so on, or X, say like, hey, we're creating the wrapped Coinbase BitPiece.
Oh, that's why these shares have been raising up.
I don't know. Maybe there's something to do with that. But even Coinbase had made a pitch that we're going to create like a wrapped Bitcoin version on Coinbase chain, just base. So so there's a lot of things in that space happening.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Is that all for today?
I think so. Just like I've got like some movements as well that's been happening. I think following up on what we discussed last week, we talked a little bit about like the interest rates, and this week it's becoming very clear. Everybody is making a bet, and movements actually are moving in the markets.
I've seen the stock market recovering quite quickly.
Yeah, so that is impacting definitely the stock market, but I think the majority of the movements, a lot of the movements now are happening in the fixed income and bond markets. People are making a play there by essentially saying, well, we've reached the top of the cycle, that's it, and now there's no more rate hikes pretty much across the globe. And now we're on a reversing trend. So people are starting to not only lock some of the gains in the
because they will be paying really good interest rates.
Well, because that's going to become the new base rate for the investment, right? So essentially, what happens there is that if you expect that in a couple of years' time, again, hey guys, no investment advice here. We actually have to always not forget that. But if you believe in the market, does seem to believe that we're now kind of like going through normalizing and going back to longer interest rates are going to be higher than short-term interest rates, etc., because we're going to actually going through the cuts. Then, if you can guarantee that in the future your minimum base rate of investment will be, anywhere between 5 and 10%, and that's actually quite reasonable to believe if you're investing now, then you're going to be expecting to put anything into riskier assets, stocks, equity, private equity, VC, etc., that your base rate of return will have to be higher because you're locking in for a significant,
for a longer period
of time, especially if a lot of activity now is going into what we call longer duration, like longer duration bonds and so on. So, for those that actually don't necessarily understand too much about the bond market, is that you have, when yields are low, prices of bonds actually come up, and inversely as well. So when prices come down, yields come higher. I won't go into the details of the relationship between that, but it's very related to inflation and expectations of inflation in the future. Now that we are solving the inflation, kind of like inflation problem, and people are not expecting that there will be a reacceleration because of some shock in the future about inflation, so bond market participants start actually becoming very confident, right? That they can actually allocate and lock in the returns for longer duration bonds. So we're talking here about, 5, 10, 15 years into the future.
Right.
And start actually loaning that money.
So if you can lock your money down like for, I don't know, between 5 and 10%, like you said, for 10 years, that's a pretty good deal. Like risk almost free.
That's the thing. So you have
why would you be investing in the stock market? It's just easier to lock that money in.
Well, if you're expecting that you can get a return of say 6-7%, right? Between the yield that you're going to be paid on the bond plus the capital appreciation of the bond, because remember that if the expectation is that those yields are going to come down, the capital appreciation on the bond itself will come up, right? So you're going to make from just having the bond itself.
Wow.
Not only the yields, the coupon that will be paid through the life cycle of it.
Yeah.
But if you expect that it will come down significantly and the price appreciation, so you could potentially have like a annualized return in a few years' time of, 10% or even more for some of the longer term maturities.
Yeah.
So that's going to be your benchmark for how much you're going to expect to allocate money into other asset classes.
Yeah.
So if you're not making at least 10% or something on a year on the stock market, there's no point in actually locating so much of part of your portfolio in that. And that doesn't happen very often, right? That's the beauty of it, is actually interest markets. They don't move too often in a big move like this. But when they move, for those investors that have placed bets into them, actually they make money for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
If you know how to allocate.
Yeah.
And so it's a very interesting dynamic, and I think that will change a lot of dynamics of what investors will expect from allocation into other asset classes, like stocks, crypto, etc., etc.
Right.
Into the future.
Watch this space.
Yeah. That could be an interesting interesting movement. There's a lot of people kind of assuming we're not reversing the trend that we were going, and therefore
I think unless we have like something that does stabilize the world again, like another war or something like that, it's very unlikely that we're gonna have another pandemic, but it's possible. But I think tensions globally are more likely to happen just with the stuff that we're seeing around the world right now.
I mean, there's a risk, right? There's a risk that
there's always a risk.
within a 10-year time, or even less, we could have another pandemic, even though like pandemics like
I know, but I mean, it's more likely that we're gonna have like a larger tension in the world in the next few years. Don't know if a war or another war localized somewhere, Europe, Middle East, or those places that are going for,
or something related to climate change or some disruption actually.
So there is risk, but like you said, with the interest rates coming down, if you can lock it in for a high rate, then you have lowest risk, but you can lose an opportunity of making more money if something happens and you could have invested in something else, but you never know. So you need to make your choice.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of like also like, it's not necessarily something very static.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of like an investment clock going on, in the sense that as the clock runs and as the time goes by and some of these dynamics around interest markets kind of like start shifting, it doesn't necessarily mean that you park just, I guess you park your money only on one type of bond, for example, government bond. You could potentially envisage, parking some of it into other types of securities, like corporate bonds or what we call like a high yield bonds, which are more like what we call like junk or non-investment grade, or even on other types of kind of like fixed income that are maybe a little bit less liquid, but then you have like a premium in terms of like returns that you gain on them relative to these, high liquid kind of like government bonds and so on. So it's quite an interesting. We haven't seen something this interesting in the fixed income market for actually a couple of decades. In terms of movement.
Right.
So
it's an opportunity now.
It's an opportunity. Again, no investment advice. This is all based on my own kind of exposure into this space. But yeah, I've looked into some very interesting kind of like long-term graphs dating back to 30, 40 years.
Wow.
And you don't see those types of movements very often.
Right.
It's like once every 10,
yeah,
15,
and if
20,
you
30
look,
years.
That's what Warren Buffett has been doing. He's been selling a lot of his stocks to make money to put somewhere else.
Yeah, maybe he's kind of like locking in some like returns.
Yeah,
for that, or
he's expecting the market to crash a little bit.
Expecting the valuation of some of that, because
there is a bubble, but it's a massive bubble. But there is a bubble on the stock market at the moment.
Probably depends on the direction that we go. I think if we have that, so a lot of investors talk about soft or hard landing, right? Especially in the US, because other jurisdictions might already have had their softer landing. But in the US, if we assume that there is actually some sort of recession, which is not guaranteed, to be honest. We talked about this last week, but actually things have moved a little bit as well in that space in the last few days, decompressed a little bit from the tensions of like last week. If you assume that anyways there will be some sort of like recession in the next year or so, then what could happen there is that actually even those returns, they could be exacerbated, because then the yields actually crash really lower.
Right.
If a recession, because then interest rates, short-term interest rates, they have to come down because the Fed or whatever, actually they have to lower that, what we call like the front end of the yield curve, by lowering the interest rates, short-term Fed funds rate. And then you see a significant increase, but then you see increase across the floor. It could be in the stocks market, it can be in the stocks equity. So after that kind of momentary period of devaluation happens, right? Because it needs to devalue first market, because now we think, things are going to go to the pooper. Earnings are going to crash a little bit for a period of time because we're in recession, but eventually that actually all comes down. Then it comes down from new floor.
Yeah.
Right. So you could see some of that movement if you believe in a hard landing. But if you believe that, no, it's going to be a softer landing, then we're actually just going to reduce some interest rates to a reasonable level.
Yeah.
That will give maybe less of those returns that I was talking about.
Yeah.
But it's still significant because we are going from a pretty high base in terms of yields. We're going from like 6%, close to 6% yields. And yields and bond prices, they don't evolve on a one-to-one. So for like if you crash a yield at 10%, that doesn't necessarily mean 10% increase in your bond price. It means much more.
Right.
Depends on the duration of it. But anyway, so I'll enter into that topic maybe in a future conversation.
Right. So just to wrap it up, picture this. Rachel Gunn, or Reagan, fresh from her Olympic breakdancing fame, is messing around with her new Google Pixel 9, now rocking the unrestricted Hermes 3 and Flux model. She's trying to get investment advice or wrapped bitcoins, but the Pixel in full comedian mode says, "Wrapped bitcoins? What about you wrap those in some trust issues, like a bad relationship, or maybe just dance your way out of the fixed income market?" Reagan, never one to back down, asks it about trust. The Pixel replies, "Trust? Those are like breakdancing, easy to start, but one wrong move and you're flat on your back. Stick to bones where the rhythm is steadier." The room erupts in laughter. It's clear that whether it's a blockchain or breakdancing, sometimes you've just got to freestyle your way through. And maybe, just maybe, keep it a little trust in your back pocket.
Yeah, you see, this is exactly what we were talking about at the beginning of the conversation. This is the weirdness of the new world, where you mix all this weird topics, nonsense, and actually wrap up into an output from an LLM. Great way to finish it.
All right, thanks everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Cheers, guys.